Okay, so despite the dramatic season, dramatic years the Steelers have had, I'm somebody that's generally not glass half full, but I actually, from what I've been hearing from the Steelers around OTAs, from back at rookie mini camps, from just around the facility and other colleagues, especially here with Alan Saunders and Steelers Now, who's been there really every step of the way, it truly feels like the Steelers are extra motivated, regardless of the drama, regardless of Antonio Brown, regardless of what Joey Porter may be saying, regardless of who anyone else is saying, any former Steeler, any former coach, no matter what they're saying to the media. And that's what the national shows can go ahead and focus on. But a lot of that is just hearsay. A lot of that doesn't matter right now. And as I said in my last show, the Steelers themselves are going to change this culture, and it truly appears the Steelers are extra motivated for the 2019 season. This is another episode of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, presented by, as the signs say behind me, Beaver County Auto and SteelersNow.com, and this a Steelers live chat version of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, coming at you, of course, from our studios up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. And as I said, this Steelers team, yes, there's maybe some reason for concern, and yes, the Steelers potentially, have holes. That's obvious, losing Antonio Brown, the best receiver in the world. Another year without Le'Veon Bell. More pressure now on James Conner. More pressure on the guy on your screen right now, and Juju Smith-Schuster, who seems to be ready. He says he's ready to be the number one wide receiver. But it's now going to be more difficult for him to put up the same numbers he's put up the last 2 years. He's going to have the double coverage that AB saw. He's going to have others step up. Potentially, the team may rely on offensively on James Washington, on Deontay Johnson, on other wide receivers. And James Conner, who was a Pro Bowler last year and well exceeded expectations, still leaves you with some semblance of question marks because he's been injury prone, going back to college and high school. He didn't even go through all of last year without suffering an injury. And he also had some fumble problems last year. Certainly didn't take care of the football as much as you would like, which did cost them at times. However, this Steelers team, by the numbers, based on what you saw the last couple years, despite those question marks and it doesn't actually allow for this hysteria and this just utter freaking out by Steelers Nation that the offense is going to ruin the season, that the offense will hold this team back, that the offense will not be able to do enough for this team to win. And I want to remind you, as I also have said in past recent shows, despite the great offseason the Cleveland Browns had, despite bringing in Odell Beckham Jr., despite another year of Baker Mayfield, who was the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and despite the changes on defense and everything they've done to really seemingly change the culture there to more of a winning team with a winning season last year despite missing the playoffs. A year prior to that winning season last year, they went 0-16. So they've come a long way, but OBJ doesn't guarantee the postseason. Only 1 out of his 5 years in New York did he make the playoffs. And the Ravens have question marks with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Can he do it again? I highly doubt it. I don't see him as a quintessential NFL starter who can lead you to the promised land. We'll see. And they have some changes as well with Earl Thomas and company on the defensive side of the ball. And then the Bengals finally firing Marvin Lewis, finally having that era come to an end, or him stepping down, however you want to say it. But that's over now after all those years. And he's now going to be an assistant with Herm Edwards in Arizona State, as that should be an HBO reality show or some network in and of itself, as they're going to be playing to win those games down in the college ranks. But that's over, so now they have a new era themselves with a new coaching staff and similar cast of characters, but Vontaze Perfect is gone. Little different. So that culture is also changing, whether it's inadvertent or intentional. And the Steelers still have a wide open path to potentially winning this division, getting back to the playoffs, with, besides the Patriots, everybody else being vulnerable. The Chargers, question marks. Same with the Raiders, Denver, the Jets. Below the Patriots, there's no guarantees in terms of the playoffs and certainly not beyond. So it's a winnable division, a winnable conference, a wide open slot still for the Steelers to turn things around. And what's held, this is not being focused on enough, what's held the team back the last couple years, despite all the drama, and yes, including the drama held the team back. The drama was part of what held the team back. But it wasn't just the drama. Aside from the drama, which was incredibly annoying to cover, the Alejandro Villanueva issue during the national anthem and that fiasco of 2 years ago, that was very, very annoying. I was there in the Steelers facility in the media room during that whole day, night, and that whole drama. And CNN being at those press conferences would tell you the issue right there in terms of that season with drama. And then last year, it's well documented here by myself on this channel and just many others in terms of Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, will he or will he not show up? AB then towards the end of the year being more than a locker room cancer, quitting on the team, and then the entire offseason of drama that eventually led to his trade to the Oakland Raiders. But that drama is not exactly why that team missed the playoffs last year. The drama is not exactly why that team lost the divisional round playoff game to the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 years ago. A Jaguar team that, yes, went to the AFC title game, but had Blake Bortles as their starter, who they've moved on from to try to win that championship and finally go further, and had a great defense, but always had a question mark on offense throughout that entire year, yet the offense is what won them that playoff game, and the offense, led by Blake Bortles then, marched up and down the field in that playoff game. So what does that lead you to believe? What does that lead you to believe? That it wasn't just the drama that held the team back. It was the defense. And Steven Nelson is now there. They've tweaked some pieces. They've added another corner through the draft. Devin Bush was their first-round draft pick, was their top 10 pick based on the trade with Denver, and is going to be the face of the next Steelers era. There it is. Steelers responsible for the culture change. I thought that actually was the other graphic. But that's my last show, Steelers responsible for the culture change. The one before that was about Devin Bush being the face of the next Steelers era. Because, well, he is. I mean, all the makings to Devin Bush being the face of the next Steelers era. All of that will help the defensive side of the ball, but that's the key, the defensive side of the ball. And the offense, yes, you're losing Antonio Brown, the best receiver in football, a Hall of Famer, the best receiver in the world, really. And Le'Veon Bell being gone another year, but they were able to get by last year without him. It's going to make it more difficult, and I detailed in the beginning of the show how it'll be more difficult with the double coverage and other players having to step up. And Ben threw a lot of yards last year, but also a lot of interceptions. Those interceptions probably can't happen this year, and there's less room for those interceptions this year without that playmaker to turn things around and fix it like Antonio Brown. However, it's not the offense that held this team back the last couple years. So the offense, despite losing AB, for me, will be just fine. The offense scored points. And it wasn't just Antonio Brown forcing that offense to score points. The defense was the issue. Juju Smith-Schuster, better each year. Better from his rookie year with 900-plus receiving yards, a historic season already right there. And then last year, numbers that were like a number one. He had a better arguable year than Antonio Brown. And I understand he'll now get the double coverage, and AB isn't there to kind of protect him, and it'll make it more difficult on him. But based on what we're hearing, based on what the media is hearing, based on what I'm hearing from him, from others, from around this team, they are incredibly motivated to prove the doubters wrong. That maybe this will help the Steelers in terms of the blessing in disguise of being extra motivated from losing Antonio Brown, from that drama, from Bell being gone and turning down their offer and really taking a worse deal with the Jets. And maybe, as I detailed on the last show, the Steelers players, veteran players, needing to change the culture of the team, not the coach. As much as you can criticize Tomlin, it's about the players needing to change the culture of the team. Well, now they have extra motivation to do that as well. Because even if they're still friends with Antonio Brown, even if you're still getting the Edmonds like on Instagram, and they still kind of don't want the media to bash Antonio Brown, they also want to win. And I feel like now they've provided that extra sense of motivation to not only get over the Antonio Brown drama, no matter what their feelings are on him, to not only have to get away from the Tomlin criticism and have the culture be criticized, because these veteran players like a Cam Hayward, like a Alejandro Villanueva, like a Joe Hayden, they really have kind of taken it upon themselves, Marquise Pouncey, to say, hey, we're going to change this culture. We're going to do this. And we went through all that, SteelersNow.com, several articles touching on that, but especially the focus of Cam Hayward's tweet from about a month ago that kind of set all this in motion. Didn't want to hear from the former teammates anymore. Did not want to hear the car wash of sorts to the national media. Wanted it in-house and took it upon himself. The coaches can't do that. A Steelers coach can't go from being very, very easy and a player's coach to now all of a sudden being hard. It would be too difficult. He'd get laughed at. Again, I touched on it on an earlier show, on my last show here for Pittsburgh Sports Live. But the players can. And the drama and the disappointments and the failures of the last couple seasons with even more talent than currently on this roster, even though there's tons of talent on this roster now, will provide that extra sense of motivation. This Steelers team will have less room for error. Okay? I'll say that. And I'm not, again, normally, and you can look in past shows, you can find my career in a Google search and what I've done in the past. Go to my Twitter, @Mike Asti 11. It's right down there for you. Well, not yet, but there it is. Right down there for you. There it is on the graphic. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to keep it real. And if I don't believe things are going to go well, I'll tell you they're going to go very, very poorly. There's members of the Steelers PR staff that thinks I'm too negative. So I'll get that, and I'm sure I'll get that as the season progresses, because I'm sure they're legs and games they otherwise should win, and it'll hurt them, like it did last year. But they were inches away from being a playoff team last year, even with all the drama, even would they be quitting on the team in Week 17. That game shouldn't have even mattered. They tied the Browns prior to Baker Mayfield. Should have been a win. Maybe even Boswell fixing himself and getting back to form will maybe change the fortunes for this team and would have last year. Blowing a 16-point lead at home on national TV on NBC, Sunday Night Football to the Chargers. I don't care how good the Chargers are. That's unacceptable. Shouldn't have happened with or without any drama going on. Losing to Denver. I mean, I can go on and on. Losing to the Raiders, that was really the game you can point to, and that's before we saw really tons of drama. The Raider loss, I mean, come on. They don't play the Raiders this year. Unfortunately, there's no game against AB. You have to wait for that one. But there's plenty of reason, and from dealings with players and from what we're hearing from the facility, from those players, what you're even seeing on social media and what they're trying to tell you, this Steelers team is well extra motivated for the 2019 season, and the offense does not necessarily have to be what ruins this team despite losing stars. Despite AB being gone, the question mark and the pressure for me is still on the Steelers defense. Because, yes, the offense may struggle at times because you're losing AB. That just makes sense. It just has to. However, if Juju steps up and can handle the double coverage, and I don't see why he wouldn't necessarily. He's been getting better and better as the years go by and seems to certainly be a number one quality wide receiver on the field. And others can step up, as it seems they will. If James Conner doesn't, he's a leader. He's young, though. And they have a very, very, very young running back group, an average age of only 22 and a half. Doesn't even, honestly, as long as he can tone down on the fumbles, not make the mistakes he made last year when in the game, but if he gives you even close to that production that he gave you on the field in terms of yards and touchdowns last year, with now the addition of Benny Snell, who again appears to be a stud, drafted out of Kentucky, for the Steelers. Certainly can spot him. It almost appears, despite being younger, I have more confidence in the Steelers running back group actually providing some protection for James Conner beneath him. Whether he gets hurt or whether he fumbles too often, Benny Snell certainly could maybe step in and spell you. Not give him a full season slate for sure, not yet, but there's reason to believe that he kind of can fit the bill and can be that other end and that backup to James Conner. Similar production as well. Samuel's there, did okay, went in last year. Certainly could maybe do that again. The tight end position certainly will be the biggest question mark with Jesse James gone and in Detroit. But Vance McDonald, from again, he certainly appears to be well motivated. This team is extra motivated based on what happened last year. Now, there's activity here in the chat. I got a lot of you guys watching, only a few so far in the chat, though, so feel free to jump in the chat. This, admittedly, was kind of an impromptu Steelers live show. It wasn't off of major news. I've done a lot of recent shows that have done well, that were more on point with a legit argument of mine or off major news. But I had something else scheduled that kind of fell apart, so I'm sitting here before, going home to have some dinner. Why not do a Steelers live chat? It's been a while since I've done a Steelers live chat, and we have a lot here in the chat, but right now, maybe Ben will stop forcing the ball, so that will lead to less picks. And you know what? That's a legit criticism. The Land Ballin', who gave me that one. Okay. The Land Ballin'? Yeah, absolutely. Ben had a good season. 5,000 plus passing yards. The most passing yards he's ever had in a single year. Hard to say it was bad. I mean, he gets tons of criticism for his ego and personality, and some of that is certainly valid, but he's going to be there for several more years now. They gave him a new contract. He's the quarterback. He's the veteran. He's not going anywhere. And for better or worse, you're dealing with Big Ben. AB's gone. Bell's gone. I mean, his apology or lack thereof to those guys, it doesn't matter now. On the field, he's there, and he's coming off a good year. He's not coming off of a great year, though. He did lead the league in interceptions, as the comment alludes to, and there were times where he was forcing the ball, and it led to those interceptions. But that goes back to kind of my point of this show, kind of my hypothesis here, my thesis of this essay, that the Steelers' offense won't hold the team back. The Steelers are extra motivated regardless of losing Antonio Brown, and the defense is still maybe who to question moving forward and could hold this team back next year, because Ben's interceptions may actually come down without Antonio Brown. Right there off the comment. And yes, for Morris Taylor, Ben did lead the league in picks. Ben had a decent amount of interceptions. He led the league in interceptions. 5,000 plus passing yards, but Big Ben definitely led the league in I believe it was 16 off the top of my head, but he did lead the league in picks. And many of those, as I was going back to, many of those interceptions were forced. But that's because he was forcing balls to AB. Antonio Brown, and this really goes back to the record he tried to set for consecutive games with 5 catches and 50-plus yards, a meaningless record that nobody else cares about. Honestly, besides AB, and maybe people who cover the team remember it, like me, but no one cares. No one cares about that record. There's not one fan bragging about that record, even while they were loving him and saying his business was booming with Antonio Brown. I mean, it's meaningless, really. There are major records that matter. That's not one of them. And Ben almost lost the game to try to extend that because he was forcing a ball into Antonio Brown, and they're throwing late in games when it wasn't really necessary because AB wanted to worry about that record. But just in general, and you could see this last year, even more than other years really, but it certainly was building, that Ben, for 2 reasons, either he was forcing to Antonio Brown due to just not wanting to hear the man, complain, and not wanting to hear anything from the other best player on the team, the other superstar, and Antonio Brown throwing water coolers and yelling at offensive coordinators, as he did with Todd Haley. Ben maybe didn't want to deal with any of that, didn't want to deal with the drama, didn't want to hear it. So, Ben forced balls into Antonio Brown. He forced to Antonio Brown when maybe he shouldn't have, just because he didn't want to hear it, just because he was kind of, whether intentional or not, kind of motivated off of the annoyance of having Antonio Brown around him as a teammate, despite a great player on the field. The other option is, because in Ben's head, this is just kind of guessing here, and an intelligent guess from covering the team. The other option is, and this is natural, Ben just fed into Antonio Brown and forced balls into Antonio Brown's direction because he's the best receiver in football. Because he said to himself, okay, there's not an opening there. No one's really open there, but Antonio Brown will find a way. He'll catch it because he's a future Hall of Famer. He's the best in the game. So he kind of had the security blanket and relied on AB's talent of being so great that he could catch anything, anywhere, no matter the coverage. One of those two options, maybe even both mixed together somehow, led to those interceptions from Big Ben. Because Big Ben, for all his faults, and he's not Tom Brady, he's not Peyton Manning, but he's a damn future Hall of Famer for sure, and did a lot of great things for the Steelers on the field, at least, and we'll leave off the field for another day, but on the field for sure. Masking offensive lines years ago, of course, winning the championships, and the first one they kind of led him, but leading them to the second one, absolutely, and playing at a borderline MVP level at times, especially with what he was dealing with. However, it's maybe the word of the show here, he was having to, the years go by, he was playing a little bit out of character. He kind of went from being more careful to being Brett Favre. Because he was forcing balls to Antonio Brown, was forcing balls that weren't really open, and was threading the needle to Antonio Brown, whether it be from the drama or what he was hearing from AB, or just because he relying on him being so great. Those things are gone now. So I think it's absolutely possible the interceptions go down. Maybe the yards go down too, but maybe it's more efficient football. Less mistakes, more efficient football. If that happens from Ben, the offense is already better even without Antonio Brown. Go through the chat here, actually do some activity now here. Top 5D this year. Same man who said Ben led the league in picks. Morris Taylor again. I mean, that's saying something. This defense again. It's hard to argue this. The defense held the team back the last couple years. It did. Okay? It lost that game against the Jaguars in the division round 2 years ago and was up and down last year. And what's been up and down? The secondary. Artie Burns, for example, has been a question mark for the Steelers' defense. T.J. Watt's brought the pass rush, but has there been enough pass rush that has not been just off T.J. Watt? They need more sacks and more rush and more blitzing and really hurrying the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. They need a better pass rush that's not just reliant on T.J. Watt. They need more sacks overall that, again, are not just reliant on T.J. Watt. And that's, again, bringing Devin Bush in. Devin Bush, the face of the next Steelers era, as I said on a past show. Devin Bush will change all of that, will help all of that. Steven Nelson, a veteran presence. Lane there as a drafted corner. He's young, but there's more talent on the defense, even if maybe there's less overall talent on the offense. And the defense was the question mark in the past. So the defense is where you'd rather improve, even if it means losing AB overall on this team. So you almost, if you could do an even trade based on what I'm projecting for his play the next couple years, maybe you'd rather have a Devin Bush than an Antonio Brown. Maybe Antonio Brown is more of a luxury. Maybe it's like Kevin Durant on the Warriors. Great player, Hall of Famer, MVP when he's there, even amongst other talented MVP caliber players and Hall of Famers. But when he's gone, they're still able to win. In fact, the offense sometimes is more efficient, clicks on all cylinders better. Other guys step up and get more opportunities, Steph, Clay, and it doesn't really cause the Warriors to miss a beat. And I understand they're in the midst of a dynasty and the Steelers are just missed the playoffs, but it makes sense here because Antonio Brown, like Kevin Durant on the Warriors, could very well prove to be more of a luxury than he was a necessity to Pittsburgh. They can score points without him, but the defense really couldn't hang well enough to be championship caliber despite the conference and league being open, the division being open, without the addition of, say, a Devin Bush or a Steven Nelson, with others playing better. And Devin Bush being there might be a player that you'd much rather have an inside linebacker like Devin Bush to help that defense, add that pass rush, and really neutralize and be that quarterback defensively for this team than even having AB on the offensive side of the ball. If Juju steps up, if Jane Washington steps up, that can be fixed. And Bell was gone anyway, but Connor, if he keeps this up, and Benny Snell gives you what I think he will, that can be fixed and remedied, even if not as much talent as those guys had naturally. But Devin Bush can fix this team more as the face of the next Steelers era. Let's go down through it here. Yep, Mike Vanlier, that's what I'm going to pronounce you, Mike Vanlier, and there's a lot of chatting from you, bro. Mike Vanlier, we need the defense to get better, especially since Shazier went down, and we also need to run the ball more. Now that AB is gone, Ben doesn't have to force things, but we need the other wide receivers to step up, like Juju. This is all kind of what I've been saying. We need another linebacker to produce besides TJ Watt. I don't know if you're just copying me or when you type this out, but it's literally the rubric of what I've been saying on the show. Absolutely, Mike Vanlier. Whether you're just copying me to look cool on the chat or you believe it, either way, yes. I want to retweet that here on the broadcast. That's what I've been saying. TJ Watt cannot be the only guy getting sacks on the defensive side of the ball. He cannot be the only guy bringing the pass rush. He's great. Love the Watt family. They do wonderful things. It's a family affair. It's a lineage of football royalty. He's building a career that I wouldn't be surprised if T.J. Watt becomes the Defensive Player of the Year someday like his brother. But, it can't be him. His older brother hasn't won a championship. His older brother hasn't had deep playoff runs. His older brother's only been in the playoffs overall a few times. And that's J.J. Watt, one of the best defensive backers ever based on what he's already done and his body of work. So TJ can't do it alone, and the team needs more. He needs to keep it up and maybe get better, of course, but Devin Bush adding with TJ Watt really can help the pass rush. It's really necessary for Devin Bush to step up and help the pass rush, even right away as a rookie, and I fully believe he can, from everything I'm hearing, from just being around him, from just how he carries himself and what we know already, the scouting report. I fully expect that from Devin Bush almost from the jump. And it's not being unreasonable. I'm not necessarily saying I'll be mad if he doesn't do it the first few weeks of the season and become that all-pro. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Becoming one of the better linebackers in all of football. And kind of what you were saying because of all of this, yeah, Mike. The Steelers haven't replaced Ryan Shazier's absence. And Ryan Shazier going down in that Monday Night Football game against the Bengals a couple years ago. And it's a wonderful thing that he's walking again, and he got married and danced at his wedding. He's doing box jumps. I'm not sure if many of you or if I can do box jumps. It's just phenomenal. However, they haven't been able to get over that on the field. I mean, his loss has really been evident, and especially wasn't that playoff game against the Jaguars 2 years ago. They tried to put Scotch tape on and just have different guys fill in, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work. I mean, it wasn't enough. So Devin Bush maybe could really fix that, even if he doesn't become the TJ Watt right away like Watt did, and even if he doesn't become the All-Pro right away like many would expect, like a Ray Lewis effect right away, like I said in the past show. Even if he doesn't immediately become the Pro Bowler that I want and the Steelers need for the next decade plus, there's still plenty of room for him to help this team, even from a lesser extent, just for the sole purpose of filling in those gaps where Ryan Shazier used to be. Ryan Shazier used to have the impact. There can't be several guys anymore. And that was why they lost that playoff game to the Jaguars. They couldn't fix it. They missed Ryan Shazier and had a lot of Blake Bortles and the Jags to run up and down the field. And Shazier's absence was still felt even last year. And he's going to be around the team again, which really is done for health insurance purposes. But regardless, his motivation, his presence, all of that, his coaching kind of, that can't help you on the field. And Devin Bush can. So Devin Bush immediate emergence might become the most important part of the Steelers season in retrospect if he truly gives you what many thought he would and what I kind of think he will entering next season, even early into next season. Let's go through the chat here. I got the whole producing my own show thing down, even though in years past, and like with the Trib and other outlets, when I've had shows, I've had producers, and some I've produced on my own, so I can't say I didn't do it prior to Pittsburgh Sports Live, but there's every now and then the perfectionist in me that doesn't like the nuance of seeing my head down while I'm throwing up a graphic, but you probably don't care. Going down the line here, do you think Bud Dupree will still be the starter for this season? 92 is breathing down his neck if he can stay healthy. Well, before I get to that, Mike Vanley, I'm not copying you, sir. I'm just a Steelers fan and I watch the games. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I just agree with everything you said. How about that? You and I apparently are thinking the same. You sound like an intelligent fan. So I got to if I'm going to get on fans when they don't sound intelligent, and many Yinzers and Steelers fans sound like total imbeciles, whether they're watching the game or on social media especially. You go to Twitter and it's a freaking forest fire during Steeler games, which is a lot of idiocy. It's not being a heel. It's just being truthful. A lot of Steelers fans, they're very, very passionate, but they don't sound intelligent. This is somebody, Mike Vanlier, who actually, and I may or may not be pronouncing your name correctly, sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He watches the games. And, well, I'm going to say that because he's agreeing with me. So how about that? But, yeah, it's clear. And you can scroll back through the docket of this video if you want to hear it again. But it appears Bud Dupree is going to get those opportunities. It certainly appears that I would not, in terms of the whole season, I don't know, but it certainly appears that Bud Dupree is going to get the chances. It certainly appears that Bud Dupree is going to get a look early on. Is going to get all those opportunities. I mean, he's another guy that they need a lot more from. It can't just be obviously relying on Devin Bush. It can't just be T.J. Watt, and it can't just be the inside or the outside. The overall linebackers really need to add more pressure. It was just T.J. Watt in the pass rush. There was not much coming from Bud Dupree or anybody else, but it still appears that he's certainly going to get an opportunity. What do I think about our draft pick, Justin Lane, and R is Steelers here? I throw the fan card away when I cover the team, guys. It's not R. It's not you and I. Win, lose, or draw, and sometimes this team is more fun to cover when they're losing and there's drama, to be honest with you. My last 2 years, first years covering the Steelers, being credentialed for the Steelers, I've done plenty in my media career, but the Steelers obviously is a big deal here, and it's been tons of drama, much more than talking about what's on the field. I've told other hosts when I've appeared on their shows, I'd love for you to have me on to talk some football, because usually you're asking me to come on to analyze and ask what this guy's thinking in his crazy head and what could maybe be going on inside the mind of Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben. I mean, just purely guessing. I'm not a therapist, even though I try to play one on the radio occasionally, and we do share a studio, or the wall of the studio next door is a therapist here in downtown Pittsburgh. But Justin Lane, I mean, again, he wasn't my top pick at corner, okay? He's not Greedy Williams, or in terms of the secondary. He's not exactly going into the draft. It was, and you go back to our NFL draft live show at Walnut Grill while that was going on. Many of us, and I have scouted him before the show. Greedy Williams, who went to the Browns, would have been the best guy to pick there in terms of a help to the secondary. It would have been a great selection for the Steelers, and it would have, my guess, it was going to be, and I predicted to be, prior to knowing the Devin Bush move, to be their first-round selection and the Steelers' first-round pick if they were still where they were. And if they didn't trade up to get Devin Bush, if the trade with Denver didn't happen, I'd imagine that maybe the Steelers would have been drafting Greedy Williams in that first round, in the late first round, and brought in the help in the secondary. Brought in that number one athletic stud, the ball hawk they need, that the Browns got and the Steelers missed out on and basically they knew they weren't going to bring in because they went ahead and traded up and brought in Devin Bush, which was an absolute move they had to make, and they didn't give up that much to bring in Devin Bush, so it's a sound move. I criticized it coming into that draft. At the time, even, I was concerned. But when I found out what they gave up and that it wasn't asking too much, totally fine with it, and he's going to be the face of the next Steelers era. He's going to be replacing what desperately needed to be replaced for 2 years in the loss of Ryan Shazier. So that move, if you can do that, that's what you do. and that made the draft really for the Steelers. But Justin Lane is then kind of a lower tier to help the secondary. I mean, there's been reason for optimism from Justin Lane. I think what the Steelers really need from the secondary, and I don't know whether Lane brings that or not, and this will be a tall tale sign for that secondary and really help the defense and maybe switch things and win some of those swing games the last 2 years, is having a ball hawk, is having somebody that can flip the field. What Greedy Williams will be doing for the Browns and would have done for Pittsburgh had they not traded up and got Devin Bush and did end up drafting Greedy Williams, who would have been the top guy for the secondary help in the draft class, is get a guy that can, intercept the ball. Get a guy that Ben's throwing the league-leading amount of interceptions. Ben's 16 picks are leading the league. And yes, he might throw less now next year, and I imagine he's motivated to do so as well as the team because he's not feeding and having to force things into AB as much, whether it be for the drama or just relying on him being so great. But either way, Ben might become more efficient. That'll help you. But then what will also help you and really help the defense some, separate from the linebackers and the pass rush, which is necessary, is flipping the field and causing turnovers rather than giving them up and losing those swing games like, say, the Raiders, the tying of the Browns, the blowing of the lead to the Chargers, etc., the Ravens, Broncos, is bringing in turnovers on your own and flipping the field. And we'll see if Justin Lane can do that, but that's going to be key because that's what they really need from the secondary. And they had years ago with the Ryan Clarks of the world that were really able to help that defense and flip the field and bring in those turnovers. The Steelers have basically been inept, and that's the word I want to use. The Steelers have basically been inept at causing turnovers from the secondary. The interception game, the ball hawk game, has been basically null and void, and they've been inept at flipping the field and causing turnovers by their secondary. The last 2-3 years, maybe even so. And that's easily why that defense has been held back. It's one of the main reasons and could have swung some of those games that put them in the playoffs last year or helped them in the game against Jacksonville. I mean, they couldn't even turn over Blake Bortles. That's a big key, and that's what Justin Lane needs to bring to this team. But it appears he's coming along so far fine. I don't know. You don't want to expect out of Justin Lane what you're expecting out of Devin Bush maybe as a linebacker. Not the same hype coming into that draft. And, okay, Milton Buckner here, not high on Greedy Williams. Apparently feeling like Greedy Williams are going to be a bust. I'm going to feel silly. Well, first off, if Greedy Williams doesn't get it done and becomes a bust, and Greedy Williams, first of all, I'll make this clear. I've been a believer in the Cleveland sports curse for years, and I know that LeBron won that 2016 NBA championship, so the curse isn't really alive citywide any longer. It's still there for the Cleveland Browns. They're only 2 years away from going 0-16. It's just been an atrocity since returning to the NFL in this century. Yes, there's reason for promise with Baker Mayfield. Yes, OBJ will make things interesting and entertaining on the field, which they've been more so entertaining off the field in recent years. So that'll be nice to, in a way, to see the Browns as a football fan in general. It'll kind of be nice to see the Browns as maybe appointment television. Maybe you're going to sit down and get excited to watch the Browns play. Possible, and not just to see how much of a dumpster fire they are on the field. They might actually be entertaining. But it wouldn't surprise me if everything collapses and the Cleveland curse still rears its ugly head around the Browns because it's still evident there. There's been no Browns championship since 1964. There never have been in the Super Bowl, and that's where some are predicting they're going to go. Division title again years ago. So, in a past life, it's still very, very possible that things will fall apart. And maybe Greedy Williams will be part of that. Maybe he'll become a bust. But it's hard to believe out of that talent and the fact that he was able to flip the field so much and leading the SEC in interceptions and as dominant as he was, playing against high-level competition in college, that talent and athleticism would not translate to the National Football League. And even if the team somehow collapses and they don't reach the playoffs, which I believe they will and certainly should with that talent on this team and how close they were even a year ago with Baker's rookie season. But if it doesn't mean he necessarily won't be getting it done individually. I mean, remember, Joe Hayden was there for over a decade, was one of the better corners in the league, and they weren't a playoff team. So he was still getting his due, and he certainly wasn't a bust, even though that team didn't win. I don't know if you can judge Greedy Williams on what the team does. It's more on what he does individually. 3-4 interceptions wouldn't surprise me. That's what the Steelers would have loved to have in terms of flipping the field from the secondary. I don't know if they're going to get that out of Justin Lane, but they needed Devin Bush more. They needed the linebacker help more. So they gave up a chance at the top corner, the top secondary help in the draft, and went ahead and brought in Devin Bush, replacing Shazier, helping that linebacker room, bringing in more of a pass rush, or not just reliant on T.J. Watt, and maybe Bud Dupree will step up as well, but who knows? That's a question mark if he'll even remain a starter or somebody who gets a lot of playing time, for, I guess, a better way to put it, by the end of the year, and that was discussed by somebody earlier here in the live chat. It's all up in the air. I mean, who knows here? But I think it's truly fair, and that kind of was my thesis of the show before I got some chat activity, that yes, the Steelers offense is going to miss Antonio Brown. Every team will miss Antonio Brown. He's the best receiver in football and has the talent to take the top off the defense and change the game in a blink of an eye. You'll miss those tweets of business booming, and the Twitter account might not be as fun for whoever manages it. But Juju is clearly getting better each year and gives you every sign he can be a number one, even with the double coverage coming his way. Ben complimented James Washington a lot last year, despite some criticism as well. But Ben has told us repeatedly he truly believes in James Washington. He believes he can step up and be a number two. He believes he can get more out of him, and it'll be another year for him to learn the offense, to learn under Ben, to figure things out and to get better. No reason why he won't be better next year. Deontay Johnson has some talent, can help you get first downs and move the chains, and receiver's a position that maybe unlike others, certainly unlike quarterback, you can fit right in from the draft and immediately have an impact on your team if you get looks, and you'll get more looks now with this offense without AB being there, because Ben, who led the league in interceptions, despite all the yards he threw of over 5,000, won't have to worry about finding AB on this route. Won't have to worry about hearing it in his ear from AB complaining. And won't have to worry about even relying on AB's talent and, he'll catch anything. He'll catch any pass. Well, that won't have to be an issue because he's gone. So Juju's your top guy now. You have other guys that can step up. You'll find more of the field. Vance McDonald will be involved. Zach Gentry will be involved. They can, catch the rock every now and then. You'll miss Jesse James, but they were never going to pay him that money that Detroit did. He had to take that deal. And the Steelers' offense scored points without Le'Veon Bell. It moved the chains without Le'Veon Bell. James Conner did fit in, providing yards without Le'Veon Bell. And Benny Snell seemingly is already learning this offense, seemingly already feels very confident in himself. The coach is talking a lot about how much they love Benny Snell so far. That big smile of his, he's going to be a superstar. He wants to be a media darling. Maybe that's good or bad, but on the field can help spell James Conner if need be, and I'd imagine James Conner will get better. And James Conner is somebody that, despite being very, very young, has had to overcome so much adversity, and as much as he doesn't want that to be talked about and have the media focus on it, it's there, it's real, that he's not going to take the number one spot for granted. Here it is, SteelersNow.com. James Conner not taking the number one spot for granted. Alan, penning that gem for SteelersNow.com. He's going to keep working harder, and he's the guy that you don't really want to bet against. And I did, actually. I bet against him last year against 93.7 The Fan, former co-host and friend Doran Dickerson, Pitt All-American, so a fellow Pitt alum with James Conner. Yeah, I bet against him. I lost the bet to Doran. But either way, James Conner's only going to get better. He's only going to be more motivated. He won't take the spot for granted. Yes, he wasn't perfect last year despite being a Pro Bowler and giving you more than you would expect. But Benny Snell, there's reason to believe he can fit in and be spotty. Same thing with Samuels. McDonald, Zach Gentry. It's not Jesse James, but bring them together. There's enough at least of pass-catching tight ends, and maybe they learn the blocking. But with how tall Gentry is, we'll see if he can get that little center of gravity. But there's reason the coaches have some reason for optimism, so we'll see. Plenty of talent still there as a wide receiver group. Juju dealing with the double coverage will be the main key factor as well, obviously. And Ben maybe having an easier time, not having to worry about AB in his ear, not having to worry about Antonio Brown wanting his, forcing balls into AB. Maybe that'll make Ben Roethlisberger much more of an efficient quarterback, bringing down those interceptions, even if it also brings down the yards. But the defense is the key. The defense is the question mark, and the defense is what needs to improve next year, and maybe it will. Bringing in Devin Bush certainly can help things. Certainly can finally maybe replace Ryan Shazier, which they've needed now for 2 years. And maybe W. Free will step up. Maybe Steven Nelson, the veteran from Arizona, will step up, and maybe he'll be the ball hawk if Justin Lane can't be. Maybe he'll be the ball hawk to try to flip the field because the secondary needs to cause more turnovers than they've been the last couple years. Those are the question marks, though. There's reason to believe they can happen, and there's reason to believe the Steelers will be in the playoffs next year, if not maybe even winning the division. Wouldn't bet against them, honestly, because they are extra motivated from being done with all the drama, from getting sick of media members like myself talking about drama or asking them these questions about the past or criticizing them because of their failures with talent and missing the playoffs last year and the upsets they lost. They're extra motivated. They are. Whether they want to admit it or not, they are. But the question marks are still there, of course, validly so. But there's reason to believe the defense will get better and fix itself. There's reason to believe that. There's reason to believe the offense will be just fine even without Antonio Brown in terms of scoring points and overall production. There's honestly reason to believe that. That's not crazy. And there's reason to believe even Ben will be more efficient and better and have a better year next year, actually, without Antonio Brown. Not crazy, and actually reason to believe that, honestly. Going to round the chat out here. Well, actually, that looked to be it there. The last little dig at me believing in Greedy Williams and saying he was the best help of the secondary in this last class. And again, even if I'm wrong, I'm not going to feel silly. I don't care that much, guys. I mean, I'm just telling it like it is. I'm an intelligent mind here, from whether covering or just knowing. And that's what I thought. That's what I think. If it doesn't happen, I'm not losing any sleep over Greedy Williams and his career. It wouldn't surprise me if the curse of Cleveland kind of collapses around him as well, even individually. But he would have been the secondary help for this Steelers team, and he would have probably been the first-round draft pick if they didn't trade up for Devin Bush. And then he would have been much more likely to help the secondary immediately than a Justin Lane, or maybe even than a Steven Nelson, based on what we saw through college and based on the talent and how highly he was up on other draft boards. So, at least going into the draft. I know he maybe fell a little bit. But if he keeps his mind right, he maybe could have been the guy. Even if he didn't tackle as well and there were other issues with him, and I know that's why maybe he fell. But they really need the help to flip the field. They need the secondary to cause turnovers and to catch the ball thrown by the opposing quarterback, especially if their quarterback's still throwing a lot of interception and Ben's still leading the league, which probably will come down without forcing it to AB. But regardless, that was a big deal that didn't happen the last 2 years. They didn't flip the field enough, and Greedy Williams would have helped them flip the field. If he could do nothing else but pick the ball off and cause turnovers and flip the field, that would have been a major help to the team. But you had to go get Devin Bush when you had a chance, especially for what Denver was asking. And they knew by doing so they would not be getting Greedy Williams. Pretty much was a lock. Well, want to remind you as we round things out, it went a little longer than I thought, but there's still a lot of you watching here in the chat. So this Steelers live chat appeared to be better than even the other recent ones in terms of live overall viewers, even though maybe a little less in terms of the actual chatters, just a few of you. And several questions from those few, though, so I don't mind. It can be two of you asking away all up and down. No problem there, no sweat off my back there. And you've been doing so because the views have been good, and they've actually been great recently in terms of all our Steelers coverage this offseason. And I will give ourselves DAP from that, the kind of collective PSL channel Steelers coverage from Alan and I. But the stuff on the draft is there on the channel. Stuff on the rookie minicamp is there on the channel. Stuff from OTAs is there on the channel. You've been watching, or someone has been watching, because they're all there and the views are happening. I want to remind you, though, to click subscribe. When you're there watching, because you're there, click on the subscribe button. Click subscribe and help us get this content to you. Help us make it easier for us. Make it easier for us to get the content to you. You can also find the Mic Drop channel with all of my shows, whether it be Steelers or not. All my talk shows are there. A lot of it is Steelers because I'm helping run the SteelersNow.com. But Those recent shows have been doing well as well. And keep on watching. Mic drop section there on the Pittsburgh Sports Live channel. Make sure to click subscribe on the YouTube channel. You can also follow Pittsburgh Sports Live on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, and Steelers Now on Twitter at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. There's no graphic, but at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter to find SteelersNow.com. Hit up PittsburghSportsNow.com. The whole family of networks here within our little media empire of sorts. PittsburghSportsNow.com, PittsburghHockeyNow.com, PittsburghSoccerNow.com, and even the last soccer show I produced that one. That did better than any of the other soccer shows. So the channel is moving along. The sites are moving along bigger and better, and there's reason for tons of optimism here within the family. SteelersNow.com, though, a major site to go hit up here. Pittsburgh Sports Live, PGHSportsLive.com for the website where this content and all our video content lives on a website for all eternity, or until the Spirit moves me to take it off, if it ever does. I don't see why I would. And again, I love criticizing if I can. Okay, I do. I'm going to be honest here. I'm not a glass half full guy usually in terms of my sports coverage. I keep it real. So many think it's being negative, but there was a lot of reason to be negative the last 2 years around the Steelers, whether it be disappointing or losing games they shouldn't, missing the playoffs last year, and all the drama. But, and this is key, I'm going to be honest when I see it. And this offseason has, after the trade of AB, this offseason has gone well. I mean, it's been a B- offseason, B+ offseason overall, because they only got a third and a fifth rounder for AB and all that drama. But they got Devin Bush. They traded up for Devin Bush. They fixed all the pieces and all the holes they needed, whether it be offseason moves of Steven Nelson. Seems like they're going to finally replace Ryan Shazier. Seems like they're going to finally get help for TJ Watt. Seems like they're finally going to get help the field in the secondary. And yes, they're losing AB and have less talent on the offensive side of the ball. But Juju's getting better, telling you everything you'd want to hear. Same thing with James Conner and Benny Snell fitting right in. They lost some talent. They lost some big names. They lost some superstars. It'll hurt. It'll be hard. They have less room for error. But the Steelers' offense is not all of a sudden going to score only 10 points a game. It's still going to move the chains and score points. Ben might be more efficient. And the Steelers' defense is what held the team back the last 2 years. They've now fixed a lot of those issues they had those last 2 years. So there's many reasons to believe the defense will be better too. So enjoy it if you're going to be mad at me being negative as we progress through the offseason and my coverage next year. I get that a lot on Twitter that I'm too negative. Well, this has been almost an hour here. This has been 52 minutes on the current clock of me being pretty freaking positive on the Pittsburgh Steelers outlook for next season and the extra motivation they have for next year. So enjoy, and always click back here and watch this again in archive and just kind of refresh your memory on me being positive if I kind of dip because things go awry. But again, I'm going to keep it real, so we're going to deal with how it is right now. And right now, there's reason for Steelers optimism. There's reason for optimism for Steelers Nation.